Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. We get together most weekday mornings at 8 o'clock Central. We didn't yesterday because we were interviewing additional attorneys. We're building our team of attorneys that will be working with our clients, assisting them, supporting them, and helping them liquidate the accounts receivables. But good to be back with you today. We have a simple one-page graphic, and a number of you have come to us and said, hey, let's do something that's graphical. A lot of people are vision oriented. They need to see how it works. So we put together, frankly, a very simple graphic that reiterates what you and I normally talk about. If we want business funding, we need to have a fundable business. And so that's addressed here at the bottom. So that's the output. That's what your prospects, your clients typically want. They would like to do the least amount, spend the least amount, have the shortest amount of time. They want the end result. And so we have to approach it with understanding what the clients want. They want business funding. But as we've covered, we can't just hope for that. We can't just want it. We can't dream it, can't demand it. We need to have a fundable business. So this graphic starts with a simple title: How to Get 1 million plus in business funding for less than $500 out of pocket. Now, that's the way that we've designed the program, but there are a couple variables, as we've discussed before. First of all, you determine what the processing fee is. If you're a reseller or branch office, you determine this amount. And that's where we start with this top ball, the top input, the shelf corporation. So maybe you're marking it up to 1,000. I know some of you, like Chris, are marking it up to 5,000. I believe there are some of you even going higher, but you control what this number is, just for clarity. So if you're using this graphic, you want to be honest, so you would change this number. But the way the program is designed, regardless of what you want to charge as a processing fee, is the program is designed to be self-sustaining after that point. So let's go ahead and look at these three inputs to be able to generate the desired outcome, which is business funding. So we start here with the top right. If we're wanting business funding, not personal funding, but business funding, we need to have a business, right? And I know a lot of your clients, a lot of your prospects already have businesses. And that's how we started out. We would work with clients with their current businesses and make tweaks and clean up and enhance. But that takes time, effort, and it has a lot of volatility to it. So now we just give away free shelf corps. So that way they're getting a clean and compliant entity, comes with a commercial address that's free for the life of the business. They just pay the mail forwarding. Comes with our already put together, ready to use business plan. Comes with complete financial projections, 36 months. So the Shelf Corp is a great value. It's the foundation for a good capital raise. So let's stop there and ask if any of you have questions. Anyone have questions on the value proposition of the Shelf Corp itself? If you're a reseller or a branch office, you should have had some information, some training. You should have the editable agreements. So you should have a lot of information. But does this make sense? And this is, in fact, what's stated. Curtis brings up a good point. Yes, there are some other deliverables that come with the Shelf Corp. We tried to just truncate it down to have no more than 3 to 4 bullets on each of these. But for instance, we include collateral that's built in. So you're right, there's some other bells and whistles. But in general, what we're trying to convey, Curtis and everyone else, is that there are three inputs. The first input is having a fundable entity, and we provide that. Okay, great. So then the second input is trade lines. And so this is regarding the concept that we need to build the business credit worthiness of the business. Now, some of you'd say, well, why don't we build the trade lines before we transfer the Shelf Corp to them? And that's a fair question. But if we were to do that first, so we do this first and this is second, If we were to add the trade lines before the Shelf Corp came over, it would increase the client's out-of-pocket cost. And what we want to do is keep it as affordable as possible, so pretty much anyone can afford to participate. But regardless, so we start with the Shelf Corp, which we've covered. Then we need to add trade lines. So what do we know about that? And we've had separate trainings. It's up on our YouTube channel. We're going to provide the EIN with the Shelf Corp. I know that's not listed, but that's one of the other bullets. And once we have the Shelf Corp with EIN, then we help the client get their DUNS number. In some cases, the business already has a DUNS number, but regardless, if it doesn't have one, we need to get one. If it already has one, great, we're even farther ahead. And then what we're going to do is help the client build out their Dun & Bradstreet profile. And that's not rocket science. We've got simple instructions. We'll work with them, but it's just making sure that the way that lenders would see the client's business is as we would want them to see. So making sure the industry code is correct, employee count, the financials, the website. It's just kind of profile information that by default usually isn't there. So we need to work with the client to add that. But again, that's free and easy. It's not a problem. So then once we have the Shelf Corp, as I've described, we have our DNB number and the profiles optimized legally and ethically, of course. Then we're going to go ahead and start adding trade lines. And as we've discussed before, that's important because before we go apply for the large business funding, we want to be able to demonstrate that our business, it's real, it's operating, it has had extensions of credit. Now, these are true primary trade lines. So when we talk about trade lines, we're not going to do anything gray or fuzzy. These are real trade lines that the client can use, whether it be lines of credit, business credit cards, company automobiles. Those are all popular examples. We've had some people say, oh no, we're not going to go get net 30s, are we? I don't think anyone wants to go get the Ulines and the Grangers of the world where you have to buy office supplies or paper towels. No, we're not doing net 30s. We're going into real, usable trade lines subject to the client's approval. So the client's always in control. So if we're adding an auto trade line, they pick the auto. If it's a business credit card, they're picking the banks that issue the credit cards. So the client's always in control. So any questions now that we've covered two of the three inputs? We've covered the Shelf Corp, which comes free. There is a processing fee. The amount of the processing fee is determined by you as the reseller. And then it takes us about 7 days to get the Shelf Corp over to them. We actually go for the first round of funding immediately, the first tranche, because we said this should be self-sustaining. And then we work on the trade line. So time-wise, and I see that Brian's asking about timeline. So normally we need about 7 days to turn this around to get the Shelf Corp into the client's hands and all this being in their name. So about a week. And then as far as getting the DNB number and cleaning up the profile, just a day or two. It can just be a little bit of a constraint. So it doesn't take a day or two of work just for Dun & Bradstreet to process everything. And then we can immediately start adding trade lines. And again, these are real trade lines, credit cards that are in the business's name. It doesn't report on the owner's personal credit, and they can use the credit cards, lines of credit, company automobiles, real trade lines. So again, why do we add the trade lines to the Shelf Corp? Because we want the business to look strong. We want it to have a good PAYDEX score, PAYDEX. It's the scoring mechanism of Dun & Bradstreet. So that way the business is credible. The third and final input shown here is collateral. Now, collateral is a little bit different. So I would say we always need a Shelf Corporation, that foundation. I would suggest we should always strongly consider adding those trade lines. But when it comes to collateral, it depends a little bit on the uses of funds. So once the client gets their shelf corp, then we're going to be working on their loan package. And so this falls under that. And then we're also going to be asking, how much funding do you want? Is it 1 million? Is it more? Is it less? And what are you going to use that money for? That's called uses of funds, like their shopping list. Well, depending upon how much money they want and how they're going to use it, as well as some other mitigating circumstances, that's going to help us determine the right type of lender, the right type of loan program. If collateral is needed, which it's not always, because number one, we're providing some free collateral with the Shelf Corp, and then depending upon how they're wanting to use the money, we may or may not need additional collateral. So it's not always the case, but it's not unusual to need collateral. So then at that point, the client can either use the assets that they have, or we can provide the collateral. So normally they just have us do that. So that is a legal transfer of assets, just like you could sell me a piece of property that you have. You could sell me an automobile. You could sell me your couch that you're replacing. Those are all examples of assets. Well, what we transfer is a specific type of asset called accounts receivables, and those are real and legitimate. So we transfer those over, and then we can leverage that as collateral because collateral means assets that's pledged for the loan. So rather than clients needing to pledge their personal assets, we can pledge the assets that we transfer over, which are accounts receivable. So we can leverage that as collateral for the loan. Plus, we can liquidate that. So if these assets are accounts receivables, they go on the balance sheet, they serve as collateral, but that's where our legal team that we're very actively building will then work on behalf of the client and will be able to help them liquidate that AR and turn that into cash flow so the business has bank deposits. So if we have a business that's set up properly, as we provide with a Shelf Corp, we have a credit-worthy business by following this trade line process that I've discussed in very simple form. And as long as we have adequate collateral, then what happens? Then we have a fundable business and we can go for business funding. Our website is 509pacific.org. On there, you can participate in the grant. You can become a reseller. There's a number of resources there. But before we end today's brief session, what questions, comments, concerns do you have about this pictorial, this simple example? All right, so Gilbert brings up a good point. So again, this asterisk is important. The design of the program is to bring clients in, to have minimal out of pocket, and then the program should support itself. So just going into what Gilbert's, I believe, alluding to, as I mentioned briefly, so we normally need about 7 days to get this Shelf Corp over into the client's hands, and then we immediately go for the first round of funding. We call it the first tranche. How much the client gets varies. We've had clients get well over $500,000 of offers. Some clients get less, but clients will get initial offers, no hard inquiry, soft inquiry only, and they're able to choose what they want. And so that's going to provide that influx. It's designed by structure to get that influx of working capital right away. So that's where the first round of funding comes from. And then these trade lines are real. So when we say a line of credit, let's say it like we got a $50,000 line of credit from Wells Fargo. It's real. It's usable. You can use a line of credit. Normally they'll give you a card that looks almost like a debit card or a credit card to pull from. They'll also give you checks that you can use. And I guess you could go into the branch and pull cash out. I've never done that. So we're getting first tranche here. Then we're getting the trade lines, which are real liquid here. And so the design of the program is to put into the client's hands money throughout the process. Therefore, it is preventing them from needing to come out of pocket for anything more than their initial amount. which again, you determine. If you're a reseller or a branch office, you determine what this amount is. All right, so let's see. Todd's asking about the trade lines. So we have a specific preferred lender, and clients don't have to do what we recommend, but we have a preferred lender. I know that we've gone through this whole process ourselves, so we know it works, and we would encourage you to do the same. We have gotten two different business automobiles under this preferred lender, and in some cases, we can even get auto trade lines without a PG, without a personal guarantee. So I think Todd's interested in that, but before some of you are coming to us saying, well, I just want the trade lines. Our process is to start here and then go here. I know I didn't number it, but this is 1, 2, 3, and then the end result is funding. If that didn't answer your question, Todd, let me know. Kenneth asked about white label. So when we have resellers or branch offices, which you can become one on 509pacific.org. There's a simple inquiry form. Doesn't cost you anything to be a reseller, not even a contract you have to sign. But when you become a reseller, we send you the editable client packet. You take our information off, put yours on, change pricing if you want. So when we say white label or private label, that's what it means, is that you're able to go out to the market under your branding. So let's say that you wanted a copy of this flyer. Well, you would take our logo off and our website, replace it with your information, and you'd probably also want to edit this to make sure it's accurate, because if you're charging more than what we charge, which is fine, then we never want to mislead clients. So if you change this, took our information off, this would be an example of a white label, private label piece. Make sense, Kenneth? If not, let me know. Good questions. Brian asked, are clients purchasing the trade lines? And I'm so glad Brian asked that. And we actually addressed that specifically recently on training. Absolutely no. We do not sell trade lines. And if in your professional experience you run into people that want to sell trade lines, I do not recommend ever, ever, ever buying a trade line. That's not the way trade lines are supposed to work. If the credit bureaus knew, like Dun & Bradstreet knew that a trade line was bought and sold, they would refuse to report it. If you're using a bought trade line with the intent of getting business funding, you can be prosecuted for bank fraud. So no, 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 we do not sell trade lines, and I would encourage you to be incredibly cautious before getting involved with any transaction that's buying or selling trade lines. That is not compliant. Don't do it. I would encourage you not to do it. All right. Rod says, excellent presentation. Thank you, Rod. Rona says, very helpful. So, okay, let's wrap it up. We're going to try to keep it concise today. Today, we wanted to present a simple graphic that illustrates how the model works at a very elementary basis. So we know clients, they're typically looking for funding, and they normally want business funding, not personal funding. So what does it take? What do we do? How does it work? Well, we're going to provide them a turnkey system very affordably. How affordable is based upon you, but by our design, it's less than 500, and that's validated if you go to 509pacific.org. And so it includes three primary components to make this work. We need to have a good entity to work off of. So we provide that for free. All there is going to be is a transfer fee, which you determine how much. Then we're going to go build the credit worthiness, which, building business credit is fast. It's not like personal credit. To build strong personal credit, it could take years, but not for business. Business credit's much different. So we're going to get that DUNS number, build out the profile, and then quickly add the trade lines, real trade lines that they can use. And then we'll evaluate based upon the client's needs and use of funds, Do they have enough collateral? Because again, we're providing some collateral with the Shelf Corp. I know it's not listed here, but it's a sub point. So maybe they have enough collateral. If so, great. Or maybe let's say that they're going to buy real estate. Well, real estate serves as its own collateral. Or let's say they're wanting to buy equipment. Well, that can serve as its own collateral. So don't fall into the trap thinking, well, every client's going to have to go get extra collateral. No, that's not true at all because A, we're providing some, B, they might have some, and then C, if what we're going to use the money for is a tangible asset like real estate, then it serves as its own collateral. But my point is, if they don't have enough collateral, we can fulfill that. And then, because remember, there's the three C's we've talked about many times: credit, collateral, capacity. That's really what makes this model work so well is you and I provide clients all three C's. We provide the credit worthiness, which is over here. We provide the collateral, which some is included for free, and then if they need extra. And then capacity, which means cash flow, we're providing that too. So when our attorneys are liquidating those receivables, that turns into cash flow going into the client's bank account to show the world that the business can afford the money it wants to borrow. So it's a very innovative, comprehensive, legal and compliant approach where you and I are providing all three C's to help clients qualify for, if they want, very large amounts of funding. And the whole model is designed off of minimal out of pocket. All right, so I see Gene's got a good question, and he says, what could we do, if I'm understanding correctly Gene's question or statement, what could we do to get it to be no money out of pocket, zero out of pocket? Couldn't we help more people if we eliminated all out of pocket? Well, Gene, that's really within your control. And we do have some of our distribution partners doing that. That if you, Gene, or whichever reseller or branch office, if you wanted to sponsor these businesses, you could sponsor them. And then literally you could eliminate all out-of-pocket cost for your clients. From a reseller or branch office, there's two primary income streams. The first of which is whatever markup you want on the processing fee, but maybe that's not important to you. And then you're making 5% on the back end. So if the client has $1 million capital raise, 5% of that is 50,000. So it's not get rich quick, but I mean, 50,000 per client's not bad, especially if you're doing some volume. So with that, yeah, I do see, Gene, a number of our distribution partners sponsoring their clients, covering this, eliminating any out-of-pocket cost, because you're still making the 5 points in the back end. But that's up to you. All right, with that being said, we'll be back tomorrow morning. If there's questions, comments, concerns, let us know. Visit 509pacific.org for more information, and we will see you back tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Have a great day. Bye-bye.